What is up, Los Angeles, and welcome back to your Rams LAFB Show. I am your host, Ryan Anderson, joined today by a very special guest and a guy I can call my good friend, draft expert for the LAFB, Will Decker. Welcome to the show. Welcome back. It's been a couple years, but you're back, man. Welcome back. We're going to talk some draft today. Like I said, he is the draft expert, so how you been, and how's this draft season treating you?
It's been good. I've never stopped loving the NFL draft, my man. It's been something I kind of put a lot of time and effort into. One of my favorite times of the year. But between that and covering UCLA football and basketball for the great LA Football Network, it's been good, man. We had a great time up in San Francisco at the Super Bowl, which was a lot of fun. Always one of the best weeks of the year, getting the media passes for that. And that Super Bowl week, it's kind of the marker where it's like, okay, I got to start prepping for draft and kind of diving into film room stuff. And most of my free time has been dedicated to that since we last met, man. So I'm ready, man. I think we're going to be talking some really good players today. So I'm excited to dive into it. And the Rams, they traded one of their first. They got a really good player in return, but they still got that pick at 13, the Falcons pick. So they're going to get a premier player, dude. And I'm really excited to talk about who that should be.
Yeah, 13 is going to be so interesting because I feel like they've set themselves up that they can really just grab BPA, best player available, at that spot. I mean, Sonny Styles, if he's available, Jeremiah Love, if he's available, obviously they have the team needs, but they can kind of go any direction. They can go wide receiver if they want to. Today we're talking defense. We're going to talk some defensive prospects, cornerback, safety, and linebacker. Obviously, even though Trent McDuffie is on this team, the depth chart is still super slim at that position at cornerback. It is, I mean, they might cut Darius Williams. Obviously, Emmanuel Forbes has proved to be a serviceable dude out there, but he is not a complete guy. You can't rely on him on every situation. So they still have plenty of work to do there. Safety is an interesting one because, Cam Curl is a free agent who played a lot of snaps for them. And, adding McDuffie, that means, fours up, Quentin Lake can move around a little bit, but, what's the real story there? Inside, outside kind of guy as well. So, interesting. And then linebacker, this is the one that people I think are most contentious about because the Rams have, since cutting ties with Ernest Jones, have kind of pushed
Look how that
this.
turned out too. You know what I mean? With what he was able to do in that Seattle defense. So tough. I know he went to Tennessee before, but you're playing him in the NFC Championship game. You see a former Ram that helped you win a title previously. That's a tough loss to look at. And just to kind of touch on the linebackers quickly, like I think Landman was outstanding for what he was last year. And I really went into depth. I think he was the 8th highest graded linebacker in pass coverage last year, according to PFF, along with the tackles that he had, well over 120 last year. But I also think, looking at some of the guys like Troy Reeder and some of the guys on the back end, this is a unit that's not being talked about enough that I think the Rams could really explore in what is considered a really, really good linebacker class, for that's out there with a ton of good prospects. And, I got a couple guys. I don't think Sonny Styles is going to be there. I think his combine was so legendary. I think he's going to be in the top 8 picks. I don't foresee him falling out of that. And I don't know if the Rams will have enough draft capital in their back pocket. I don't know if you saw this. They're probably interested in trying to get Max Crosby as well, with the Crosby sweepstakes just kind of getting off the ground here too. So I don't know if they can get Sonny Styles, but there's a couple really good linebackers that if you're the Rams, maybe not in the first round, maybe in the second round, there's guys I really, really like there.
Yeah, so just to update where the Rams are with their draft picks, traded away a good haul. So currently they are sitting at 13 in the first round. Second round, they have number 61 at the back end of that one. Round 3, 93rd overall, and they do have a 6 and a 7. I thought they had 7. That's only 5. But I'll look into that at another point. But there's a big jump between round 3 and round 6 and 7, and they've done a lot of good work in rounds 4 and 5. So, Trent McDuffie definitely has to pay off to fulfill that amount of draft capital. That's a conversation, though, for a different day. I had the worst take in the world possibly for this draft, which was that maybe Sonny Styles was going to drop to the back half of the first round. At the time, I was thinking that he could be seen as possibly this year's Isaiah Simmons, who went, I think, number 9, but did not pan out because he moved from safety to linebacker, and that kind of, is he a tweener? Do people know what to do with him? Do they see him as a linebacker? So I thought that, and then he has this combine, all this hype is going into it, and he's going top 10, top 5, maybe. And he's getting more comps, not to Isaiah Simmons. He's getting comps to Micah Parsons now. So it's changing.
One of the best combines I've ever seen. And I think, there was a play for that. If he came in and kind of underperformed a little bit, was a little bit more pedestrian with some of those measurables. But just to compare, man, a 43.5-inch vertical jump, that is the highest from a linebacker since the year 2003. 4.46 40 time. And he's doing this, man, at 6'5", 244 pounds. So he can run like a gazelle at a size of damn near an edge rusher in this league, playing linebacker, like with a green dot on him. This guy, he solidified himself in a draft class, to me, that has it's a well-rounded class the more I look at it, but there's very few blue chip prospects. And he is a blue chip prospect. So especially with those combine numbers, especially with the production he had at the great Ohio State University. So, there was a scenario if he kind of underperformed, he might be there at 13. I don't think there's a chance, man. I don't think he leaves the top 5 at this point. So I admit it. Like I was kind of with you. Like he could have been at 13 initially, but that's why I didn't even include him on my linebackers that I'm going to be talking to you about, because I just don't foresee him being there.
Well, if he is, I think that's the pick there. But let's jump to cornerbacks, just because that's the position that's on everybody's mind with Trent McDuffie. And obviously, hands down, easily the biggest need on this team. Even with McDuffie, they got to add guys, like I was saying at the top of the show. So what do you got? What do you got for cornerback in this draft?
Yeah, so Trent McDuffie, really big pickup. And you want to talk about a guy that is he's a really good corner on the outside, but where he's at his best is at the nickel corner slot. That's where he makes his bread and butter within the Chiefs offense, Chiefs defense. So when you talk about the corners in this draft, there's 2 guys that are right there where it's like, I think the Rams are going to be in perfect position to evaluate each of these guys. They may get their choice of the 2. I'll start with Jermod McCoy, the cornerback from Tennessee. He has the best tape of any corner prospect. The problem, Ryan, is he did this in 2024 and not 2025 because he tore his ACL in January of 2025. 6 foot, 193-pound corner, really good ball skills, really physical, like your prototypical press man corner. Had really good numbers, like 44 tackles, 4 interceptions, 7 pass deflections. I implore people to go watch his Alabama tape from 2024. Problem, though, he didn't run at the combine. He's kind of waiting to do it at his pro day. So we talk about how important these numbers are with a guy like Sonny Styles, that we're like, this guy solidified his spot in the top 5 because of how good he was at the numbers, the 3-cone, the vert, the 40. We got to see how he performs, especially since he hasn't played in over a year. So that's kind of my biggest concern with a guy like Jermod McCoy. But I think he's the surest tackler of any corner in the draft. And I do think, in a weird draft where it's not getting the hype like a typical draft does, like your 2024 where, Caleb, Drake, May, and Jaden go 1, 2, 3, or, the big name brands that come with that, in the 2025, 2023. I think this is probably the best 1-2 corner punch since the 2022 draft when I had Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner and top 5. Not better, but the best since then. So I really like Jermod McCoy. If he's the same corner from Tennessee 2 years ago that you get at his pro day and moving forward, I think I would actually lean McCoy over the guy I'm about to say. But I'm a big fan of McCoy. kind of gives me, I hate to do the player comps because everyone's just going to be like, you're comparing him to a Hall of Famer. But the play style, I want to say the play style I envision for him is how Richard Sherman was used in Seattle. Like big physical corner, can take away half the field. You can do like a press zone coverage type of scenario with a guy like Jermod McCoy. So I really like him from that angle. He's going to get you a lot of picks. He's going to body up those big receivers, those talented receivers, whether it's a Shanahan schemed receiver or Jackson Smith and Jigba out in Seattle. I think he's a really good player. So Jermod McCoy was my number one. And the second corner I have, Mansoor Delane from LSU, 5'11", 187 pounds. Here's the stat that really kind of blew me away, Rye. 358 coverage snaps last year, gave up 0 touchdowns and 0 penalties. And that's per Hayden Winks at Underdog Fantasy. Was just very solid across the board, very fluid, easy. They call Gary Payton the glove in the NBA. That's kind of how I think about this guy, Mansoor Delane. Well, I just really believe in this guy. And Lance Zierlein, who's one of the more respected guys in the NFL draft community, he has him as the second overall prospect, graded-wise, higher than Fernando Mendoza, higher than Jeremiah Love, higher than all these guys, trailing only Arvell Reese going to the NFL draft. So Mansoor Delane is liked by a lot of people. He had one of the bigger bounce back years I can remember for a prospect. So wasn't really great, his sophomore year at LSU, allowed over 500 yards receiving in that LSU defense. This year was like a night and day switch for him. He was easily one of the best corners in the country, allowed sub 200 yards. I talked about the 0 touchdowns and 0 penalties. His Arkansas tape is fantastic. 3 pass deflections, an interception there. But, like I talked about Lance Zierlein, the guy he compared him to is Quinyon Mitchell of the Eagles. So if you get anything close to Quinyon Mitchell, who to me is one of the best young corners in the NFL, that's a home run. We'll start with the corners. I got some safeties as well to kind of maybe, quell that Cam Curl, departure. But what do you think about those two guys in Delane and McCoy?
Well, what perks my ears about McCoy is press man. I mean, you look at last year's tape from the Rams with their smaller and slight corners, they just had a really tough time playing man coverage, and teams knew that, and they just went at those guys. And, I think adding they got to, obviously Trent McDuffie helps a lot with that, but adding another guy that has that kind of size that can hang with some of these big receivers, some of these NFC West receivers, and it just seems like every year there's another guy that's just added to some roster in the NFL, some wide receiver that is just big and fast. Alec Pierce, we don't know where he's going to end up, but like he's kind of like big, fast dude that is going to eat up zone coverage every time. Yeah. And so just adding some versatility there for sure. I mean, Mansoor Delane was probably the guy that everybody was – they have – everywhere I've seen, they have him penciled in cornerback 1. So, like, if you could just kind of give kind of A/B kind of test on that one, what does Delane bring? What does McCoy bring? Where are they different, I guess?
Where are they different? I think McCoy is more physical, and I think he can, at the line of scrimmage kind of rough you up a little bit more. I do think Delane has a better first jump on the football, like in terms of batting it away. I think the ball skills actually would go to McCoy if he's at his best, but that's the risk, right? Delane is healthy. He played last year. He's fresh. You know what you're kind of getting with him. With McCoy, it's kind of the coin flip. Like, are we ever going to see the same player again that we saw in 2024 after the injury? So both are really great. I have no problem either way. And I think that's why Delane is 1A for a lot of people. But the McCoy 2024 tape, don't get it twisted. The eye in the sky doesn't lie, as I like to say. And McCoy had the best tape of everybody. So it's going to be a close. I think if they're both on the board, not like a little bit away from McCoy's pro day. And that's going to be one of the biggest attended events, I think, for NFL executives that are looking for a corner in the draft, just to see how he runs, to see how he moves. We didn't get to see him at the combine. That was the biggest kind of, disappointment for a lot of fans. Was we were ready to see Jermod McCoy and see how he performs, because it's been since like December of 2024 since we've seen this guy, So it's going to be close. I think today I would take Delane, but it's like a day-to-day switch up. I go with the physical guy, but the higher upsides with McCoy, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And we're talking 13 here. I mean, there's a chance that one of these guys isn't available at 13. So, definitely something to watch there. Yeah, I mean, 13, either one of those. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely lean towards more of the physical guy. Seems to fit their kind of current more what they're trying to do with their defense is just being really, really fierce and just having some ass kickers, for lack of better words, for it across the board. That's kind of, you look at Jared Verse, you look at Braden Fiske, are all their measurables, high up there? No, but they are fighting on, they're going 110%.
Physical dudes, they've built a physical defense. So it's, they've done a really good job there, man. And, Shula getting retained again, I think is such a big win for the Rams, because I know he was floated out there for some head coaching jobs. They're lucky to get him for another year.
Yeah, 100%. So let's move to safeties, and let's hear what you got to say on those guys.
So safeties, I would probably put it at about 4 to 5 blue chip prospects in this draft. And I think 2 of the blue chip prospects are safeties. So they're going to have their choice. Cam Curl departing. He had a monster year. He deserves to go out and get paid. But you could bring in probably some of the best safety prospects we've had in a long time. For reference, we have not had 2 safeties picked in the top 15 of the first round since 2018, when the likes of, it was Derwin James and it was Mika Fitzpatrick. Those were the 2 picked in 2018. So those were the 2 guys. That it's been since then. And I think we're going to get 2 safeties here as it stands. And you probably know this name. A lot of people have him in a top 3, prospect overall. Caleb Downs coming from Ohio State. Some have called him the smartest player in the draft, legit top 5 prospect, and is the only defensive back over the last 3 years with 250 plus tackles, 15 plus tackles for a loss, and 5 plus interceptions in the last 3 seasons. His measurables aren't ideal. He came in underwhelming in those, and he didn't run the 40. But if you're talking about a kind of a Chris Shula guy, when you come in there and look at what this team has assembled, it's maybe not the biggest or the fastest, kind of like a Braden Fiske, as you were talking about, kind of like a Nate Landman, but he likes intelligence. I think he values intelligence over natural skill set and what they could do. And Caleb Downs, it's like having an extra coach on the field. Like, if we're talking tape, it's up there with the best. He doesn't make mistakes. Offenses rarely tested him at Ohio State and Alabama just because he was so fluid and was always on top of what the play was going to be. Coaches have raved with him. I think some of the combine interviews said it was the most impressive interviews they've had, some anonymous coaches with a player, any position. So this dude is he's either going to win the presidential race in about 2038, or he's going to be the starting safety for the Rams or whoever is lucky enough to get him. So Caleb Downs is a really awesome player that I think everyone knows about, but because it's the safety position, you see these guys drop that shouldn't drop. Kyle Hamilton went 14th overall when he was previously the best safety prospect. Derwin James went 18th, like we talked about a few years ago. So you have guys that, are off the charts positionally at the safety position, but because that group is so undervalued when it comes to, needs and talking about the safety position as a whole.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
I think you're going to get your shot at Caleb Downs. And the other dude that I think freshly became a blue chip prospect in my mind, had a top 5 combine performance on top of great film, really productive, player is Dylan Thieneman coming from the Oregon Ducks. Elite coverage, elite football IQ, very well versed in the coverage instincts out there, extremely versatile, plays the run really well. And here are some of the combine results he had. So, very similar player to a Caleb Downs, where it's like very smart, intelligent. But here's what he has that Downs doesn't really have. He can do almost everything Downs can do it with the intelligence, but he ran a 4.35 40-yard dash. That's the 5th fastest in the entire combine, a 41-inch vertical, and a 10.2 broad jump. Like, these are elite measurables across the board for a 6 foot, 201 pounds. One of the most, polarizing draft prospects that I think is going to be raising his stock significantly. And, he had over 300 tackles in his career. He's one of 2 Big Ten defenders last year in 2025 with 90 plus total tackles, 5 plus pass deflections, and multiple interceptions. Thieneman, to me, it was close. I think I'm actually preferring Thieneman to the likes of a Caleb Downs, given that it's close in the IQ department. But when you add on the measurables that you can't teach, I mean, the Rams might just get their Nick Eamon-Worry, as we talk about it right now, with a guy Dylan Thieneman, if they want to just plug and play a starter right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about Thieneman. My worry with him is that he is not as versatile as some of these other guys. We've talked about these game-changing first-round type guys. And I think if he was available at 29 and they still had that pick,
I don't think he'll be there for the reference, though. I think he is going to be going pretty early. Like that, him and Sonny Styles, those combine performances are like, that stuff matters, like whether we like to admit it or not. It's kind of showing how you compare to the next guy when it comes to your athleticism. And Thieneman blew it out, like had literally maybe outside of Sonny Styles, the most impressive combine of any player. So it's just, I think he's going to be a top 20 pick, man.
The safety position is so interesting. You got guys like Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Nick Eamon-Worry. Everybody started going like, oh, we got to get one of those guys. Those guys don't just grow on trees. I mean, Caleb Downs, with these smarts that you're talking about, seems like, perhaps that he could play multiple different positions because he could take on more responsibility just mentally. But I don't know if he has necessarily that skill set to move in there. But if you drop Caleb Downs into this defensive backfield now with Trent McDuffie, who he likes drinking his coffee, watching film. He's often referred to as one of the smartest guys out there. With Quentin Lake, also, one of the smartest guys. Just in terms of brilliant guy too, on top of his physicality. So it would be, I mean, that's a PhD level DB room just right there with those 3 guys. So I like that. But I'm not looking at either one of these guys as that kind of Kyle Hamilton skeleton key. Am I wrong in that? Because
Hamilton's difficult. Hamilton's difficult because he is such an outlier height-wise. Like, these guys are 6 feet tall. Hamilton's like a legit 6'4", 6'5", doing what these guys can do. So Hamilton's crazy. Even Derwin James is a little bit bigger, but I think these are, 2 of the best safety prospects we've had in the last 10 years. And the crazy part is it's a great year to get linebackers. It's a great year to get safeties. And it's a great year to get running backs in this draft. I think those are 3 of the most underpaid positions in the NFL as it stands right now, showing the value of what teams think about these guys. So it is really good in those 3 areas, but it's just not the offensive tackles or the defensive edges or the quarterbacks or the wide receivers that we've seen in past drafts. So that's what makes it different. But I mean, if you could tell me you could draft a potential all-pro safety, multi-time Pro Bowl safety, you're going to do that. Like, you're just going to take the risk on it. You know what I mean? And I think both these guys have that high-level capability where we're talking all pros if they can achieve that status of where we think they can be.
Yeah, if you talk about this Rams safety room without Cam Curl, you look who's currently there. I mean, Jalen McCullough was a undrafted free agent just a couple of years ago. They drafted Cam Kinchens fairly high, but he has a very specific skill set. He's much more of that, center fielder, backstop kind of guy, not really moving up to the line of scrimmage. So putting some investment at safety in the draft, I definitely think that's going to happen. Use one of these 7 picks to go after one of these guys. Let's get to linebacker, another interesting position for the Rams. We touched on Ernest Jones a little bit in our pre-show banter. Still kind of frustrates me that they moved on from a guy like that rather than paying him. But obviously Landman's been what he's been. Omar Spates, another UDFA. I think he's played very admirably, but I think those guys are limited. I think you got to add. I think you got to add a body in there. So who are some of the guys you got?
So with Sonny Styles out of the picture, and I think one you'd probably like to trade back and maybe acquire, maybe towards the end of the first round. We know Les Snead. He's no stranger to a trade at this point, so I can't completely rule it out. And then one guy I've got maybe at the end of the second round where he's at. And I'll start with the guy that I think they could trade back. 13's a little rich for me, but when you look at the caliber of player, you're getting a guy that could come in right next to a landman and really have high results. That's Jacob Rodriguez from Texas Tech. This guy was a first-team All-American at linebacker, 128 tackles last year, all over the field. We knew he was an absolute stud when it came to the film and everything and how he meshed with one of the best defenses in the entire country in that Texas Tech unit that has Lee Hunter, David Bailey, projected top 40 picks. David Bailey might be second guy off the board when all is said and done with the New York Jets. So Jacob Rodriguez, man, we knew he was talented. We knew everything was going on there. He absolutely blew it out of the water at the combine. This is nothing new that we've talked about. We talked about Thienemann's, combine run. We talked about Styles. The sad thing with Jacob Rodriguez in a normal year, this would have been the best linebacker combine run, but he just had to go against arguably the greatest combine, performance I've ever seen personally in Sonny Styles. What Jacob Rodriguez did, 6'1", around 230 pounds, 4.57 40-yard dash. That is, in the green. That is very solid. 38.5-inch vertical. So you're like, this guy drops back in pass coverage. There's a throw over the middle, coming from a Sam Darnold, coming from a Brock Purdy, Jacoby Brissett right now as it stands for the Cardinals. This guy can jump up and feasibly swat the ball away. And the most impressive thing, and this is, kind of change of direction drill. It's the 3-cone drill. A lot of scouts really look at this more than the 40-yard dash. He broke the record for the linebacker room at 6.9. So the change of direction on this kid at a 4.57 40 is as elite as you can get. So you have all those kind of measurables going up for you. Do I think the Rams should look at him at 13? I think it's a little rich for my blood, even though he's an All-American, even though he knocked it out of the combine, even though I think you could plug and play him as a starter. You could do a lot worse at 13 than Jacob Rodriguez. I just think for positional value, you mentioned the defensive backs that are probably available at that 13 spot. If you trade back to maybe like 28th through 31st, 32nd, kind of where they were slotted for that, second first round pick before trading to KC. I would love that for Jacob Rodriguez. I think that's perfect draft value right there. I think it's fantastic stuff. And like we said, Les, he's always open for a trade, so you can't rule out a trade back with the Rams. And then for the second round, I got my guy, Jake Golday. And this guy is an absolute freak. When you talk about big linebackers, I talked about Jacob Rodriguez being 6'1", 230. Jake Golday is 6'4", 240 pounds. And he did a very, very impressive combine. He's a linebacker from Cincinnati, 39-inch vertical, considered elite among any position. 10'5" broad jump, that's top 5 among linebackers. 4.62 40-yard dash time. So at 6'4" and carrying 10 more pounds, he was not that much, slower than a Jacob Rodriguez right there. 6'4", 239. And I watched the film on him. In today's NFL, you have to be just as good against the run as you are against the pass. People are thinking, how can I find that next Fred Warner, that next Roquan Smith? I'm not saying Jake Golday is that. All I'm saying is is for a second-round position, you're looking for immediate starters that had production. This guy had over 100 tackles last year. His pass coverage ability, especially at that size, right? Quarterbacks are going to have to think twice about trying to throw it over a linebacker because at 6'4", he's probably just as tall as the tight end or just a couple inches off, let alone the vertical leap that I mentioned at 39 inches. So with all that being said, from a run standpoint, from a pass standpoint, the tape on Jake Golday is really, really solid. And I think at that, 61 pick for the Rams, that is right where I would slot them in at to take that. So if you take a Jermod McCoy, Dylan Thieneman, Caleb Downs, even a Mansoor Delane, and then you get Jake Golday in the second round, that to me is an A+ grade for the Rams when we're talking about 2 defensive players selected off the board.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, if they took a linebacker in the first round, it's blowing people's minds. I will tell you that. They will not see that coming whatsoever. But with this class, I mean, it has to be on the table. It is a position 1 of 11 on a football field. It's time. It's overdue for some investment there. I think probably even more. Well, I like that. I like the trade back idea. That's very tasty. I think if they're going linebacker in the first round, picking up something else in a 4th or 5th round to kind of round out their draft just a little bit more, make it a little bit, add a few more dart throws in there if they want to take a wide receiver or something like that. The guy that I can confirm that they have met with is one Josiah Trotter, who's also slated to go in the back half of the second round. Young guy, West Virginia, interesting prospect there. So, they do have their eye on the linebacker position. That is confirmed by these reports that they did meet with Josiah Trotter in the pre-draft process. So that is it for the defense. We're going to do this again for the offense. So we will be back. We're going to be talking wide receivers, quarterbacks, and we got another and some offensive linemen. So definitely check that out. We're gonna have tons of draft content. We're planning to have tons of draft content. We're gonna stuff your ears full of as much of this as possible. And I love having Will on here. I love these kinds of shows because he makes my job easy. I just set him up and he just knocks it out of the park. So that's makes it real easy on me. So I appreciate Will. If you are a UCLA fan, there is no better show out there for you than what he and the Madman Jamal Madney do. They're at the top of the game now that Ben Bolch is out of the game. I heard he moved over to he's doing both USC and UCLA.
Both UCLA and USC. We actually saw him at the UCLA basketball game the other night when Jamal and I went. So he's doing both. The coverage is just a little bit more. It's not as UCLA focused. It's weird seeing him in a USC beat room. I'll tell you that much. That's foreign territory for our guy Ben.
Well, and Connor Morissette moving over from USC to UCLA. I mean, that's a wild one too. I mean, things are up in the air right now in the media world.
Hey, to quote your favorite artist, Bob Dylan, the times are a-changing, my friend. So
nice. There's no better way to get on my good side than quote me some Bob Dylan. Anyhow, what's your show called these days? I apologize.
It's the UCLA LAFB show, but for the OGs, it will always be the Bruin Bible. So check us out.
Yeah, and he's at Will Decker LAFB.
Oh yeah, follow me at Will Decker LAFB. So Will LAFB Network.
He is a must follow for all things draft and UCLA. So as always, appreciate you guys. I will be back with Aaron Coscarelli tomorrow. We're going to talk Tyler Higbee, big signing that the Rams made just this evening. So we will talk. Actually, this is going up tomorrow, so forget everything I said. Aaron Coscarelli will be back on the show shortly, so keep an eye on that. Until next time, that's all we got. Appreciate you, folks.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.